Okay. Yeah, so as I was saying, my name is Oishika Ghosh. I'm a part of the Startup India initiative under the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, which falls under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. And I'm here at IGDC with my colleague Neeraj Khater, and we're here to the purpose of the session is to tell you a little bit about the Indian startup ecosystem, how the gaming startup ecosystem is doing in particular, and what Startup India under its ambit offers to startups in terms of benefits, incentives, and other initiatives. And if any of you have any specific questions that you would like to ask or clarify, once I'm done with this session, you can, of course, come up to us and we'll help you with it. Okay, so coming to the genesis of the startup ecosystem in India, startups have been growing in India for over the last 2 decades in general, but especially over the last decade, we've seen a very high growth of startups. The Startup India initiative was launched back in January 2016 by the Honorable Prime Minister. And there was an action plan that was created for the Startup India initiative to follow, which sort of propels the pillars on which all initiatives and all programs have to be created on. And the Startup India Action Plan is available on the Startup India website if any of you would want to have a look at it to understand it better. But the three key pillars of action under the action plan was A, simplification and handholding, B, funding support and incentives, and third being partnerships and synergies between industry, academia, and incubation. So following suit, we have been trying to come up with focused facilitation and initiatives that handhold startups across stages and help them across their specific needs. We've also come up with funding support and incentives like the Startup India Seed Fund scheme, as well as the Fund of Funds for Startups. And of course, coming to the last bit, we constantly work with incubators, academic institutions, investors, corporates, and other stakeholders across the country to create programs and schemes that will ultimately help startups across sectors. So this is just a brief overview of the startup ecosystem in India. We are the third largest startup ecosystem in the world today. We have recently achieved the milestone of officially recognizing 1 lakh plus startups. And as you would know, not a lot of countries in the world have a specific definition for startups, right? Like, because it's difficult to create a definition for startups that helps it differentiate from other businesses in general. However, we do. And I will come to that definition part later in case there is anybody here who's not aware of it. But yeah, DPIT has recognized 1 lakh plus startups in the country. And 50% of these startups come from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is something that gives a lot of hope, not just to us, but to the entire ecosystem in general. And going forward, with initiatives like IGDC, we really hope to see more and more startups coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities in specific sectors that are extremely tech heavy or, innovation heavy. So that is one thing. I would also like to highlight that 48% of all our startups are led by women, as in they are led by women directors at the helm of the organization. Startups have also been at the forefront of creating jobs in the country, and there are startups that have created more than 11 lakh plus jobs till date, and any startup on an average employs approximately 11 people today. So this is just a snapshot of the journey that has been there, that the startup ecosystem has gone through in the last 7 to 8 years with the launch of the Startup India initiative. So by the time the Startup India initiative had launched and when we officially started recognizing startups, there were less than 400 plus DPIT recognized startups. And at that time, it was also a little difficult to, make businessmen and founders in general understand that what's the difference between registering as a startup or registering as a MSME or a business in general. But today, happy to tell you that we've reached that milestone number, and we see more and more number of startups growing exponentially. So I believe that the first 10,000 startups that were recognized, it took us about 800 plus days to get to that number. However, the last 10,000 have been recognized in just 3 months. So that talks a lot about the growth of the ecosystem. At that time, the startups used to span only a very few specific districts, mostly coming out of metropolitan cities and tier 1 cities. Now we have startups across 763 districts. When the Startup India initiative was launched, it was also part of the action plan that not just at a central level, but of course at a state level as well, there has to be more focus on developing the startup ecosystem. So we've also worked very closely with state governments and their state startup noodles to support them in developing their own state startup policies. So today we have 31 states and union territories that have their own startup policies. And of course, there are, a few things that automatically get highlighted. For example, there are states that have dedicated policies for women. About 26 of our states and union territories have policies that are dedicated to women. Of course, there are states such as Karnataka, Telangana, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, who have also developed policies specific to sectors such as the AVGC sector and the gaming sector in particular. So that is also something very aspiring to see, and we hope to, create that momentum and let it grow. Needless to say, we've of course reached a large number of unicorns. There are 108 unicorns in India today who've raised, and all the unicorns and the soonicorns and startups have raised a total of more than $70 billion in funding. And as I was saying, in my previously, that these startups have generated so many jobs and so many employment opportunities, close to, it shows 11.8 lakhs, but by the time I'm speaking, I'm pretty sure it's crossed 12 lakh plus jobs. So yeah, I think this would, in a way, showcase how long the journey has been and how far the ecosystem has come. A little about the gaming ecosystem in India. It is, of course, a very budding sector, and at this stage, it requires a lot of push from stakeholders across the ecosystem. As on 23rd October 2023, as per the official DPIIT data, we have more than 500 plus recognized startups in the gaming sector. I believe there are many more startups than this actual number, but of course it takes time for the ecosystem to formally recognize the startups as well, which is of course one of the objectives of this session. But we've seen a huge growth. Actually, there's been a growth of more than 500% in this gaming sector startups from what we see through our data points itself from 27 to 2023. These startups have generated jobs, and again, they are doing a great job at increasing employment opportunities in India. What I would like to highlight is that 30% of the gaming startups are women-led, or they have women directors, which is something, again, serves as an aspirational area for all stakeholders to work towards to sort of increase the representation of women in gaming. However, coming forward, to let you know more about the role that Startup India is playing as an enabler of the startup ecosystem. So the first step, and this is the most important bit, is to getting recognized with Startup India, right? Because all the benefits and all the schemes that are provided by Startup India are provided to DPIIT recognized startups. So whatever I would cover later on, this would serve as the base for that. So DPIIT recognition is based on the official definition of a startup that I was talking about earlier. There are 3 key objective things we look at and a subjective criteria that I would come to later. The first being the nature of entity. Any entity has to be a private limited company or a limited liability partnership or a registered partnership. to be able to apply for DPIT recognition. And we also get a lot of questions from a lot of budding entrepreneurs, especially young people from college, that we are solopreneurs, so how do we get registered? So of course, if you're a solopreneur and if you have that legal, if you've achieved the legal age of incorporating a company, you can get yourself registered as a one-person company. And that one-person company, of course, will come under private limited company. So coming next to the years of incorporation, which is the age of the startup. So the entity has to be less than 10 years old to be able to be recognized as a startup. And the third being that it must not have exceeded 100 crores INR in revenue in any given fiscal year. Because through these parameters, if any of these are achieved, let's say startup is doing a lot of revenue, more than 100 crore, then it sort of goes out of the definition, the legal definition of a startup. But these are the objective criteria. The subjective one is that in one way or the other, the startup has to focus on any of these four things, whether it is really innovative, it's creating a product that has not been created before, or it's working on improvising or improving upon a product or service that has been created before. It has a scalable model. It has the potential to create jobs or to create wealth. So essentially, it's not required for a startup to be doing all four of these, of course, but if you're fulfilling even any one of the four subjective criteria, then you would be able to apply as a startup. The process is pretty straightforward. There is an online application form on the Startup India website, which is startupindia.gov.in. You fill up that DPIT recognition form. It asks for really basic details about the startup. What's the sector you're focusing on? What's the industry? How many people have you employed? Then there are certain questions that ask you about how you're generating revenue, or how do you plan to generate revenue? What is the USP of your solution? What is the problem that you're trying to solve? So 4 to 5 questions that help us get to know what exactly you're working on and what's your motivation, etc. So once you fill this application form and submit it, it gets processed within 3 business days, 3 to maximum 4 business days. And you get the DPIT recognition certificate online. It's a completely online process, so you don't have to go anywhere physically with any documents. Sorry, so you have a question? Yeah. No, absolutely not. Thank you for asking that. It has to be filled up by the startup itself. We do see a lot of startups, going to their CAs or maybe their other relevant, vendors or organizations for help, but it's a very straightforward form, and we have seen that it's best to be filled by the founder themselves, because nobody knows the business like you do, right? So yeah, point to be noted by everybody. It's best if you yourself fill it. Okay, and also every communication that goes to the startup goes to the authorized representative's email ID. And we also try to ensure that the authorized representative of each startup is the founder or director themselves. So yeah, that should answer your question. There are multitude of benefits that come with getting recognized as a startup. Few being on the areas of funding, government procurement, support with applying for and fast-tracking IPRs. There are tax benefits that are provided under Section 80IC of the Income Tax Act and Section 56, which is the angel tax exemption. We also help with compliance regime, so easy compliance with a lot of environmental and labor laws that a lot of startups may want to comply with. So just an overview of the Startup India portal, because whatever I just talked about, all the benefits, all the initiatives, all of them come on the Startup India portal, which is startupindia.gov.in. We have more than 660,000 registered users, and these are not just startups. These are also other stakeholders like incubators, corporates, investors, even individuals who probably aspire to be entrepreneurs at a later stage. They are also registered on the portal because the portal gives certain opportunities and has certain resources that can be used by aspiring entrepreneurs as well, and I'll come to that later. But yeah, there are some specific benefits that I would like to highlight that may be of interest to you. We have hired resource partners who have very generously come on board on our portal to support startups at either free of cost or at a very subsidized rate. So for example, we have Amazon AWS and Freshworks giving credits to startups. We have CAs and legal experts that help with registration and other compliances to startups. So all these services are listed on our website, and as a DPIT recognized startup, you can apply for these. And you can get in touch with the service providers. And since we're a government entity, all these benefits are provided pro bono. There are also learning and development programs that are available on the Startup India website. There is a primary learning program called the Startup India Learning Program that's open to everybody regardless of whether or not they're a startup. And it sort of goes through all the business stages of a startup. It's something we recommend to mostly people who are aspiring to be entrepreneurs or at a very early stage. We also have something really interesting if you would want to explore that. It's called an idea bank on the Startup India website. It's essentially for people to brainstorm and look at different problem statements that they can potentially solve for. We also conduct a lot of showcases, both virtual and physical. Especially during COVID, because mobility was so limited and restricted. There are a lot of international events where we usually take our startups as delegates, right? Like there was VivaTech 2023 at France. There's upcoming a Slush event at Finland. There's the India-ASEAN Startup Summit in Malaysia in December. So we usually reach out to our startups as per whether they are from a specific sector or at a stage that's more relevant, and we take them as delegations. However, when that was not possible, and that's a method that we've adopted even now, we do a lot of virtual showcases on our platform. So there are, whenever you would go to the Startup India website, you would find a page where there are a lot of startups across sectors showcasing their innovations. And it also helps these startups in a way to gain traction from investors or other, especially international investors, because for them, it's much easier to find everything on like a government website that's centrally procuring all information. We have a lot of marquee programs and schemes and policies as well. Startup India partners with corporates, incubators, accelerators, investors to launch incubation programs, innovation challenges wherein corporates and even ministries post very specific problem statements, and if there are any startups in the sector that are able to solve for them, they are provided with cash grants, pilot opportunities, etc. So I'll be coming to that and covering that later. And of course, there are a lot of ecosystem stakeholders that you would find on the portal that you can connect with. We also have recently, actually not so recently, it's been a year now, we've launched the MARG portal, which is the National Mentorship Portal. And what you can do essentially on that portal is, if you're a registered startup, you log in and you fill in all the details, let's say wherever you need specific mentorship support. These can be 4 to 5 specific areas. And on the basis of the support that you need and your sector and industry, through AI, you are connected and matched with mentors who have been very generous to be onboarded on the portal voluntarily. So we have startups, we have experts from across the industry. If you would want to have a look at it, they're publicly listed on the portal as well. So yeah, I think it should give you a good idea about the kind of resources that are available to founders, startups, and even more ecosystem stakeholders. I would quickly like to cover something about how Startup India is working towards providing startups with access to markets, both domestic and international, through private and public partners. So as you would know that there are different departments under the central government, of course, that are working on very specific problem statements. And there's a way that we've figured out where we usually partner with these departments, and we work on curating problem statements basis the scheme that they want to launch, or basis any specific area that they want to solve for. And we invite applications. There's an open call for applications for startups on the Startup India portal. And all the problem statements are very clearly, transparently mentioned. We usually keep it open for a month or so, depending on the number of applications. And we have received a tremendous response to these kinds of innovation challenges. And like a very good example here would be the Jal Jeevan Mission Challenge that we did with the Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, which comes under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. So they were looking for solutions that can solve for the problem of portable drinking water, clean drinking water devices that can be deployed across the country, particularly in villages and tier 2, tier 3 districts. And it was a long process where the ministry and Startup India invited applications from startups, and we received an amazing response. We even conducted mock pitching sessions for these startups. We helped build their capacities by getting industry experts on board so that everybody gets a fair chance to, pitch to the ministry in the most proper way possible. And currently, we have 3 winners from the challenge, and their solutions are being incubated and will potentially be deployed across the country. So I think this is a great way to see how startups are actually at the forefront of solving really key problems for the country. And given that the gaming industry is on a rise and we have seen a lot of gaming startups emerge, I would say that potentially the way we use AR, VR in education, or we try to sort of get education and gaming mixed as well. I think there's a lot of scope for startups in this sector from relevant ministries, and whenever you find any such opportunity, I would really encourage you all to apply for it. Of course, all of these details and information are provided to all DPIT recognized startups whenever such an opportunity comes, but it would be good to see any of you there as well. So similarly, as I was saying, we do a lot of such innovation challenges and accelerator programs with corporates as well. And we've partnered with more than 250 corporates till date, including accelerators and investors. And of course, for the gaming sector in particular, there has been a lot of activity from the private stakeholders and incubators. So again, it would be a great opportunity for even the ecosystem stakeholders who are in this room. If you think that there is a potential, there is some idea that you have that you would want to pitch to the government, like, please go ahead. It's a sector that even we are pushing a lot for, and we see a lot of potential in, so we would be happy to have that conversation as well. Okay, so this probably would be the last bit that I'm going to cover, how we're providing access to global markets. Again, specifically because we've had a lot of gaming startups come to us and tell us that we need international investors and mentors particularly. So we have 21 bridges with countries, and we are involved in a lot of multilateral engagements as well. For example, I was just mentioning the ASEAN Summit. The India-ASEAN 2023 Startup Summit will especially be focused on startups, and it will be held in Malaysia on 12th and 13th December. Like other international delegations, we are inviting applications from startups across sectors, whoever would want to go for the delegation and showcase their innovations there. We've also had startups getting a lot of business opportunities with clients, with corporates, even getting investment offers during such delegations, because here we are very used to seeing a lot of innovations literally right across the street, every booth that you go to. But when you take these international delegations, you realize that the international stakeholders look at it in a completely different manner. And for them, most of them, it's really a novelty in terms of the kind of impact that the startups are creating here with the technology. I think I have already covered this. We have taken our startups to Dubai Expo, to Slush, to Viva Tech, to Reflect 2023 in Cyprus. And we've gotten a good response from stakeholders, across these countries at these events. What I would definitely encourage any startup founders here to do would be to apply for such opportunities, because even at a domestic level, you can still network and get ahead with the support of ecosystem stakeholders. But if and when such international opportunities come, you should definitely try to at least pitch for them, because again, gaming and AVGC as a sector is a sector of global importance. So keeping that in mind, I would really encourage you all to explore that. Okay, that brings me to the end of my presentation. If you have any queries regarding any scheme, any benefit, any incentive, or anything that you would like to explore or discuss with us, there's the QR code. You can scan that, and you should get all the details there. However, I would just like to take a minute, and I think I just have 4 minutes. But if there are any questions that anybody would like to ask right away, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can, of course, take those questions out of the room. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rashmi. I have a question for you. Is it important that if a startup is only recognized by DPIIT, we can get those incentives from the government? For example, let's say if I'm somebody wanting to start a company, and I have registered a company of my own, but then I'm not aware of so many of the regulations and the things that have been provided by the government. And I end up making a lot of mistakes, either in terms of policies or in terms of just the whole understanding of the legal process, which is, kind of dealing with either it could be with the MCA portal. And there are so many things in terms of the paperwork which is involved in when it comes to, in starting a company. So are there any alternative ways that I could get in touch with somebody from the Startup India initiative or like a mentorship apart from the DPIIT recognition? Because I have gone through the portal and I have attempted multiple times trying to, fill in the application form. But then I think the criteria is a little more rigorous to be able to qualify for the DPIIT, and it takes a little more. I think the stages need to be in a little more mature than somebody who is just starting up in the very initial stage. So a person like me, I have made a lot of mistakes. I started my own company, and then there were a lot of hassles that I was facing, and I was looking for somebody who could guide me, either in terms of the paperwork or the legal procedures or dealing with the CA or, hiring things and so many. So the Prime Minister of our India has definitely done a lot in terms of marketing the Startup India initiative in a very good way. But I think when it comes to, in the ground reality, there are a lot more challenges which are not met in the real ground level. So yeah, and then the website also, to be honest, I mean, it doesn't, it's not very user friendly, I have to say that. So I'm just wondering, are there other avenues that a person who is having a dream to kind of becoming an entrepreneur explore other than Startup India, like the website or other avenues, or in terms of mentorship, apart from the DPIIT? Because I think it's a little more rigorous process than, I don't think it's that easy. I have attempted several times doing that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question. So I'll just like to answer that in 3 parts. So of course, there are also, if there are 1 lakh DPIIT recognized startups, I'm pretty sure there must be at least 50,000 unofficially like non-DPIIT recognized startups as well. So of course, you can very well become an entrepreneur and a successful one without DPIIT recognition as well. However, under the Startup India mandate, all the benefits that are provided to DPIIT recognized startups, because there is no other way for us to ensure the compliance to see that yes, the benefits that are being provided to startups, and let's say not really very big companies or businesses that may not come under the mandate. So that is one thing. Second thing, for DPIIT recognition, about the stage that we were talking about. So any startup that applies for DPIIT recognition, we accept applications across stages. There are 4 stages. So first being ideation, second being validation, third early traction, and fourth scaling. So even if you're an ideation stage startup, somebody who has just registered their entity and probably you have a website link, let's say, but your product is still being made, whether maybe your product is at an MVP stage and you're still trying to commercialize it. We accept applications and we have approved applications across all these stages. So in fact, 60% of our 1 lakh startups are from ideation and validation stage. So absolutely not that only early traction or scaling stage startups are able to apply and get recognized. So but if you have faced any issues with the DPID recognition form, I think we should be able to help you in person as well, because it is a very straightforward process, and we have been getting queries even from startups from across stages that maybe there's some technical issue that we're facing, and we try our best to resolve all of them and ultimately all get recognized. So we'll be happy to help you there. Third, I think a good point, if there is any other entity that you may reach out to immediately even before Startup India, I would suggest that the states are extremely active in promoting entrepreneurship in their own states. And since we have a startup nodal under each state government, maybe that can also be your first point of contact. Of course, we all work in Liaison and we are all very aligned with the ecosystem development that's going on. So if you face any issues, even with, let's say, something as simple as DPIT recognition, I'm pretty sure the state startup nodal would also be more than happy to help you there. So that's a good point of contact that you can reach out to for sure. Hope that answers your question. And my colleague Neeraj and I are here to help you out in person with any application issues you're facing. Okay, I think I've already crossed my time limit, but if there are any more questions, we're here available at least for the next 15 minutes to answer any of those questions. Thank you so much.